So there's a lot of details to come, and I know that the president has said they're going to be working this out with, among other people, you. But is this a doable plan from your point of view? Isn't this awfully ambitious?
Well, I think they went big and they went bold, and I think that I'll give the president credit for laying out a very ambitious, I think, tax reform proposal. You're right. I mean, ultimately, Congress is going to have to be heard on this, and we have our own ideas up here about what this might look like. But I think the key is we need to get rates down. We've got to allow companies to recover their costs more quickly, and we've got to get growth back in the economy. And we get growth back up to 3% or north of there. It means better paying jobs, higher wages, and a higher standard of living for people in this country. It solves a lot of problems. And so this is really critical, I think, in terms of the president's economic agenda. We want to work with him, and it's going to take a president that's very engaged to actually make tax reform a reality, because it's obviously a very heavy lift.
As we listen to various officials from the White House, it seems that as they draw the balance between growth on the one hand, the thing you talked about, and a deficit on the other, that is really saving money and not going too far on the hole, they're more concerned about growth than they are about running up a bigger deficit. Is that a view shared widely with your colleagues up on the Hill?
Well, there are in the Republican conference in the Senate, at least, different opinions about how much we can deficit we can endure in terms of a big tax bill that gets us a lot of economic growth. Obviously, you incur some deficits in the near term in order to get the growth that you in the long term that will help get this economy growing at that faster rate and ultimately generates more revenue for the federal government. So I would say that there is a limit to how much you can assume you're going to grow as a result of changes in tax policy. And I think the key is going to be striking the balance. I mean, we got people who have views about a big, robust tax reform bill and aren't as concerned about the fact that it may not be revenue neutral or budget neutral. And we have some who are very concerned about ensuring that it's revenue neutral. So my guess is we'll end up somewhere in the middle. But I do think that the key in this, the objective has got to be growth in the economy. That ultimately is where we've got to get. We've got to get this economy out of the doldrums, out of that 1.5% growth, back up to 3% or north of there, and that will have a dramatic impact on the standard of living in this country.
So, Senator, it strikes all of us watching this that you have a lot in your platter, all of you and your colleagues up there on the Hill right now. Among other things, besides a tax plan, a really revolutionary tax plan, you've got to keep the government going, one would hope, after tomorrow night. Where does that stand? Because we frankly hear conflicting things at this point. We had heard that there was a compromise that had been worked out. It was all fine. People say it's going to be okay. And then we saw the president tweet out earlier he doesn't really agree with what the Democrats are asking for.
And I think in the long run, David, the government will stay open. Nobody has an appetite for a government shutdown. The discussions do continue. They are productive, and I think we're getting closer to the finish line. And my guess is today the House and the Senate will pass a short-term continuing resolution that funds the government into next week so we can conclude work on the longer-term fix. But I'm fully confident that the government is going to stay open. There's always a hot rhetoric that surrounds these debates when it comes to government funding, particularly when you get up against a deadline. But it's going to be important, I think, in everybody's opinion, Republicans and Democrats, that we keep the government functioning.
And finally, Senator Thune, just to show how broad the agenda is, we also have coming up this afternoon the president signing an order about aluminum imports, saying that his administration has to really expedite an investigation whether aluminum imports are posing a risk to national security, something he did earlier with respect to steel. From your point of view, is this the right approach on trade? Because we haven't really used that national security thing since about the 1980s when it comes to trade. This is a pretty aggressive stance. Do you agree with it?
Well, I think it depends on the sector of the economy that you're talking about, the particular industry that's impacted, and how that bears on national security. There clearly are some things that we import into the country and export that have more implications for national security interests, and so obviously the president and his team are going to make judgments about what those are. But on the broader issue of trade, I mean, we have to be aggressively opening markets. I mean, I represent a state in South Dakota where we've got to export. We've got crops that we raise and livestock that we've got to move around the world, and so my concern is that the administration be moving very quickly, if we're not going to have multilateral trade agreements, to start striking bilateral trade agreements with our key trading partners so that we can increase the amount of trade that's going on and our ability as a nation to be able to export to markets around the world that will improve our economy and create jobs here at home.